You're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
I have a hole in my stomach!
I can't go back.
Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Renee Steelman. This podcast is my story. It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen. Hello. Hello, Lila. How are you?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I am good.
Okay.
How are you, Renee?
I'm doing very well. And da-da-da-da.
Hi, guys.
The amazing Maven is joining us today because we have a very crucial topic to talk about. And what I love about having Maven with us today, Lila, is she is half our age and has a completely different outlook on the subject that we're talking about. And I love it. And she's been so vulnerable and willing to share her story with us. But it completely gives, to me, it's the bookend. It's like Maven's story of caregiving and then our story of caregiving. It puts they're great bookends for what women in general are going through. And so I appreciate, Maven, I appreciate you being here and sharing your story with us today.
Yeah.
So the subject that we're going to talk about today is caregiving. And I want to start out by showing a clip from one of our renowned prophets. And if there is anyone out there listening, I want you to understand that you don't understand what a prophet's words mean to the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I love, one of the things I love about this particular talk is that this is Spencer W. Kimball. He was the prophet when I was in my teens. And right before I got married, he was the prophet. And so the things that he said, it was almost like it was subliminally absorbed. I don't remember sitting at, watching conference on TV and just being like, what did the prophet say today? I don't remember that, but it was so, well, you guys know how it is in the church. Once conference is over or once a prophet has given a talk, those talks are repeated and they're given in Sunday school and they're given at Young Women's and they're, given at a fireside.
Yes. It's everywhere. Yeah.
Right. And so,
yeah,
exactly. So these things were just subliminally implanted and taken in as God's words, and we are to follow the prophet. And so I want to play a little bit of what he says, because for all of us who were, I was 12 when my parents were baptized. Lila, you were born under the covenant. Were your parents converted? Yeah. And Maven, your parents, you were born under the covenant?
Born in the covenant, yep.
Yeah. So you
it
all
sounds so culty to say. It's
yeah, I know. It's so, you don't hear people in Catholicism. They'll say, oh, I was baptized. These are the pictures of when I went to catechism, things like that. But you don't hear that born under the covenant, kind of statements,
It's creepy.
Yeah. So let's start out with a few words from our past prophet. And I'm going to start out at about 3 or 4 different places in the whole talk. We're not going to watch the whole talk, obviously.
As long as her husband liveth. But if her husband be dead, she is at liberty to be married to whom she will. Oh.
Okay, he's quoting from Paul right here. He's doing a quotation from the Bible about a woman's husband, that dies. Now what's going to happen to her?
Only in the Lord. Only in the Lord. Significant is the brilliant answer of the Savior to the Sadducees, who tried to trap him. Master, They said, Moses said, if a man die having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up seed unto his brother. Now there were with us 7 brethren, and the first, when he'd married a wife, deceased, and having no issue, left his wife unto his brother. Likewise the second also, and the third unto the 7th. And last of all the woman died. Therefore in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the 7? For they all had her. They felt they had one question that he never could answer, that his face would turn red, that he would be embarrassed. Whose wife shall she be of the 7? Well, the answer was very simple, wasn't it? Neither of them would have her in eternity. She wouldn't be in exaltation, because they were none of them married for eternity.
Okay, first of all, I don't know where he's getting that scripture. I don't remember, anywhere in Paul's teachings or letters to the different people that he wrote to, saying something like, you must go to the temple and be married for time and all eternity to be a married couple. What the crap is he talking about? And I love how he's saying they had her. They all had her. Yeah. It's like she was property passed around, and and they all took advantage of this.
The question is, like, if she was all of their property, then who does she belong to, like, for forever after? Whose property is she really?
Yes. Yeah. And I love that these old men read these scriptures, and it doesn't even click. All right, so let's go on.
Yeah.
They were all married till death do you part. The most deceptive little phrase that is in our language. The answer of Jesus was perfect. And that's the basis for my sermon tonight. They could have no further argument. Here was his answer. Do ye not therefore err, because ye know not the scriptures, neither the power of God? But when they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels in heaven.
Okay, so here he's bringing forth the idea that if you're not married in the temple, that you will not be in the celestial kingdom. You will be an angel. You will be a servant unto others. And this is how they're taking biblical scripture, mixing it in with new Mormon doctrine, and coming up with the truth, what they consider the truth. But let's skip ahead to 26, and we're going to talk about the wife's role here. Let's see, it's 26. Ooh, come back. All right, let's go here.
As long as her husband liveth. But if her husband be dead, she is at liberty to be married to whom she will. Only in the Lord. Only in the Lord. Significant is the brilliant answer of the Savior to the Sadducees, who tried to trap him. Master, they said.
I think I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the very beginning. Let's see. Oh, so he's talking about marriage. He's talking to a group of BYU students. And I love it because this talk was given in 1973. And yet he's giving the same rhetoric that's spoken today. This is the same talk, basically, that Ezra Taft Benson said, that other people have said. As the generations passed, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, it was the same thing. Why aren't you people getting married? Why is the numbers of marriages going down? Why aren't you men getting married? Why are you women not getting married? And so he's stating that in the 70s, these darn BYU students were not getting married. At one point, he even says they had the gall to seek for more education. This was in the 70s, and I'm like, well, I got married. I had 4 girlfriends that we all hung around with my senior year. All 4 of us got married months. All 4 of us had 5 or 6 children. And so all of our friends were like that. Everyone in our ward had at least 4, if not 6 or 7 children. I don't know where he's getting these statistics that there just was this group of people that weren't getting married in the 70s. But anyway, so let me just do this part.
Can I jump in?
Oh, wait. Yes,
I was
jump in.
going to say, I could speak to this a lot because especially as someone who went through the young single adult wards and then failed out of that and moved into single adult wards because I didn't get married by 30. This was something that was also just a constant rhetoric for me. It was the same message. It was just, and they're baffled. They're baffled, honestly. I'm in wards with my peers. I think we all get it, but it was always hard because there's part of us that's wanting to follow. It's not we're trying to be disobedient or we're trying to deliberately delay. A lot of us wanted to be married. We wanted to be good Mormons. We wanted to do the right thing, but they're just so out of touch, and it's just not the same. And they just treat it like it should be as easy as just a guy goes up to a gal and says, "Boy, you're sweet, and can I court you?" And and they just think in their minds like that this is how it's supposed to work. And it's like, maybe that worked for you or President Nelson in 1930, but this is a different world now. And anyway, it was just a lot. And every once in a while we'd get some kind of a traveling authority, either if it was the stake president or someone. And the higher up and the older they were, the more out of touch, obviously. Where even I think there's Elder Ballard that the just put on a little lipstick, it's not hard kind of thing. It's just like they're just so confused, and it's just why you can't just go up to someone and just be like, let's get married next week. Anyway, it's interesting that this is happening in the 70s, and I feel like my adult life, like the constant guilt.
I love that. I love that you said that you like flunked out of the young single adult program. That's so perfect. Yeah, that's exactly right. Let's listen a little bit more. Oop, come back. All right. That's not where I want to go.
Defy your determination and to prepare for that married period of your lives, which will be hard, demanding, and difficult, but which will be rewarding and beautiful and eternal in its nature. The Lord has ordained that these mature spirits which he has created shall be permitted to come to this earth at a proper time, be provided with a small, pure body and a mind uncluttered, be given a loving home with two parents to teach and train it, and come to maturity through numerous varied growth experiences, then in turn to marry, provide bodies for another generation, and go through the same process, working toward this eternal plan. You have been a child. You are now an adult and about ready to enter this next phase, which is married life. Some of you are now married. Some of you are anticipating, and still others of you are quietly hopeful.
Okay, I don't know if I can.
I don't think that's as funny as that's another weird moment, and I think where Mormons laugh at something that when you think on is strange.
Well, and if you even look at the expression on his face, he's almost got that Bednar look where he's like, what was funny about that? I don't think that was funny. I don't know why you're all laughing, And but he goes on to say, I'll just read it to you because I don't know if I can listen to him. But he says, most of you are unmarried, but we hope that every normal one of you will be married. And we are reminding you now with all the power and influence we have so that none of you fail our proper marriage, and that you will so completely fortify that institution that it will be an eternal one. We are gravely concerned about the number of our people who are being married out of the temple and even out of the church. Then we're gravely concerned again about that unbelievable number who permit their marriages to go stale and let them be destroyed. May I say that almost all marriages could be beautiful, harmonious, happy, and eternal ones if the two people primarily involved would determine that it should be, that it must be, and that it will be. A recent spot check, I don't know who's doing the spot checking, of stakes reveals that fewer than 40% of the marriages in those stakes were temple marriages. The figures increased in these stakes only 2.9% in 4 years. How long will it take us at that rate to reach a reasonable record? Of course, there are a substantial number of sealings after marriage, but we're mindful also that many of the original marriages fail and end in divorce. We wonder why nearly 60% of our people would be satisfied with less than an eternal marriage. And he goes on in this talk to basically say that if you're not married in the temple, then that's the reason why your marriage failed. And then the other thing, which he said, and it became the covenant path of the 70s, you know, the statement, there's always a little statement that gets picked out of these talks that becomes the t-shirt motto. Yeah. And his was that most marriages fail because of selfishness. And so, Lila, addressing you, I don't know how old you were in 1973. You probably were about 3. No, 12. Yeah. So I'm sure, and as we've talked, you've mentioned that your parents had a weird Disney-like marriage that kind of set up your siblings and you for an unrealistic idea of what marriage should be. And I'm sure your father, I'm sure, was, good friends with Kimball and associated with him, as a general authority. And so this idea that if you tried hard enough, you would have a perfect marriage, and that if you don't have a perfect marriage, it's because you're selfish.
Yeah.
So when you decided after 33, how long was 34 years of marriage, that you just couldn't do it anymore, did you have those thoughts going on in your mind?
I had those thoughts all along because it was started out rough and it stayed rough.
Yeah.
For 33 years.
Yeah.
It was early on that I started thinking, is this me?
Yeah.
Am I the reason? Is this,
Yeah.
that this isn't working? I mean, we're both good people. The way they talk makes it sound like there's this and there's this, and you either fit this, which is where you should be and where, God made you like that, or you're choosing to go a different path, which is sin. It's one or the other.
And selfishness.
And that's sin. And never considering that, like I was saying before we started, in Maven's situation, or her, like, some people aren't made or don't want to be a mother. Some people just probably shouldn't be a mother. Some people shouldn't get married because they're not cut out for it. They act like there's only one, cookie cutter way that women are created. And that if you're not doing that, you're sinning. And it's your fault. And if you're not married, it's because you're not doing something right. Because that is the plan. This is the plan. And you get on that. It's like, if you don't get on that wagon, you've really screwed up your life. And
I think just a second, Megan, because I want you to introduce your story, because I think that the saddest thing about this is, as we're talking with the theme today, which is women being invisible, even when Spencer Kimball was quoting this story from supposedly the words of Paul, this woman had no name. She had no other purpose in life than to be a wife or property to somebody. It didn't matter. Pastor, it had to be a relative, the husband's brothers. I don't know what happens if they didn't have brothers, but had absolutely there were no scriptures that said anything about her talents, her gifts. She was to become property of this man. And then she was to bear seed. And then her role was, you will care for this man and you will care for your children. And that is the end. That is your job. Ta-da. And so in Maven's case, as you just said, Maven, you grew up with this. You thought, well, I don't feel like that's what I want to do, but this is what I'm supposed to do. So talk a little bit about your struggles with this idea that your only purpose in life is to be someone's property and that you should be bearing children.
So I didn't really struggle with it until much later because I wasn't seeing it that way. So I actually did
Right.
think that I wanted to be a mom, but I honestly don't know if I can go back and see what I really wanted or not,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Um, but I did know that I knew I didn't want to get married young and right away. And that's what my mom did. And this is kind of going back to the talk in 1973. I think my mom she was still a child. But it's still like that's what she was growing up in among extended family, because my mother's family were Jack Mormons, I guess. Like talking about my grandma and my grandfather, but they were drinkers, they were rabble rousers. My grandma, I know, was a chain smoker. I think my grandpa was too. So my mom grew up in a very neglectful, abusive situation, but her grandparents were right next door. So there was still like some church influence. And so my mom, I think understandably, really stuck in with the church narrative. She wanted a happy family, I think, more than anything else. This poor child wanted to be loved. She was parentified. I might have said that wrong way, but she was the oldest kid. So when her mom is like drunk at the bars or just like in bed all day, she's the one taking care of her little brother and sister, right? So anyway, I just, and she's constantly fed this narrative that we know of, marry a man in the temple. It's the Mormon version of a knight on a white horse taking you to a castle. We've got a priesthood returned missionary taking us to the temple. And so she gave up a full ride scholarship to a college on the East Coast that would have gotten her the hell out of Utah to marry my dad. And because he checked all the boxes, and she was promised that this is how you have a happy family. And, this is how you are loved and find joy. And that I can't think of anything more desperately this woman would have wanted than that, And so, yeah, just that I think 19 is when she got married and 20 is at, when she had me. So, but then I'm just thinking it just no matter, and it didn't turn out well. My mom was still a child and never really had gotten to be a child. It was tough. It was really tough. But the church sells you all these promises, and it doesn't matter how much you want them. If you're not getting them, it's still always your fault somehow. So yeah, I never felt like I was doing anything wrong by not being married, just because I never felt like I really fell in love with somebody and I wanted to, but I was just like, oh, I really want this and this is what I should be doing, but I'm going to say no and I'm going to keep going to school. There were a couple times where, I turned guys down from dating, or there was a guy that was interested in me before my mission. And I was getting ready to go study abroad, or work abroad. It was an internship. And then I was, talking to this guy and saying, I think after that, I think I'll go on a mission. And he was like, how about this? How about you go on your internship, and then you don't go on a mission, but you come back here and we can see where this goes. And I didn't see it going anywhere. So I told him at that time, I was like, whether or not I go on a mission, like this isn't going to go anywhere. That's not what I'm feeling. And so anyway, but I don't feel like I did anything wrong in that, just because like, it just wasn't right. Nothing about it felt right.
Right.
It's not what I wanted. And I felt like I should at least be in love with my husband. And so I wasn't in love with this guy. It was going to happen.
You think?
But
you think?
Yeah.
Just a small little thing. Like I should kind of love you or something, but hey,
yeah. And that's fine when you're younger, but when you start getting older, I think the less they really feel like, because this was at actually a job, and this was a Mormon guy, and he was talking about some other like young people that worked in this hotel that I worked at, and there was 2 LDS girls and then 1 LDS guy, and he would ask both of them out. Like he kept trying to date them, and the story was told in just such a judgmental way that like this was a great guy, and these girls apparently were too good for him, or he wasn't good enough for them. And so he gave up on them, and he eventually found a nice woman to marry, and then those 2 women are still single now. And I remember hearing that and just thinking like first of all, why is it so wrong to not be interested in a guy? Like I really hated that. And then also the idea that because they weren't interested in the guy, that they deserve to be single now. Like, because you weren't interested in this guy, you don't get any guy. There's not anyone better or more suited for you that you could actually enjoy being around. It's just like, no, it seems like this was your option or nothing. And if you don't like this one, then nothing. Or you're single now because, again, you've done something wrong. And there were times, really, honestly, I would kind of wonder, like, well, I don't feel like I've done anything wrong, but I don't know, maybe is there something I did that, like, maybe this is why I'm still single now? Like, is it a punishment? Is there something I need to repent for? Like, that's how deep it is. But I feel like the church is at the basis of a lot of these problems. Like, my mom's marriage wasn't good because she got married way young, way before she was supposed to, because that's what she was told was the only way to be happy. And and that would work, that it would be the magical thing that made her family so different. But I think because she, did it, I think, at the wrong time and the wrong person and all that, that contributed to the marriage failing. And then the singles in the church now are like, there's way more women than men. So it's not anything to do with sinning or putting off marriage. Especially, like he was drawing on and on about, like, non-temple marriages, those are seen as less and that you're settling. And so when it's like the numbers just don't work out unless you bring back polygamy, but that's a whole nother thing, there's just nothing you can do. The numbers, it's just a simple math problem and they're not going to add up. And honestly, I think it's really sad to me that there are women who really wanted to get married and maybe even had good relationships with men who were outside of the church, but in the end gave up on those relationships to hold out for a temple marriage, and then get to the point where they never marry, or if they wanted kids, they don't marry until it's too late to have kids. And it's just sad. I just feel like the church is at the bottom of all of these.
Well, and not only that, but I agree with you. And I think they've done a disservice by thinking that they can bring in, like, Wendy Watson and her girlfriend, Sherry Dew. And and then they've got the lady that's in the Relief Society presidency now that's single. I forget what her name is. Not Annette Dennings. And then the younger girl, she's single. And so they brought, and then the one that was in the Relief Society presidency, but now I think she's over the special habitat services, humanity. I think she's single. And they bring in these women, say, look, we love single. It's kind of like the LGBTQ plus. We love single women. Look, we put them in positions of authority, but they don't tell the people, why are you single? Because they want to give this persona that they're single because nobody ever asked. And I'm thinking, I don't know, Wendy, I have a hard time believing when you were 19 or 20 that you didn't have a guy at church that asked you to marry, but maybe you had an idea that you wanted to become a professor. You wanted to get your PhD or whatever you needed to do to work, so you turn that one down, you turn this one. I just have a hard time believing that these women were never given the opportunity to marry, and that they just, look, here they are now, single, 70-year-old women that just were never asked if they could get married. I'm like, no, you had a goal in mind. You had something you wanted to do. That's my opinion. And you chose to pursue that. And so you think they weren't that nobody was ever interested in them?
It's possible, but like when you're talking about an opportunity, it's kind of like the story I was saying, like what's an opportunity? Like, just because somebody likes me, when I have zero feelings towards them, it's not that I'm like, no, I want my education more than you. It's just like, I'm not interested in you, period.
But here's my thing though. You're smart and you have critical thinking skills. But like Lila, I remember you thinking, well, he's a good guy. I guess I should marry him. So I'm not really attracted to you, but you're a returned missionary and you hold the priesthood, and I could get married in the temple. So I guess I should marry you, where you were mature enough, Maven, to say, I don't really like you, but I think I might find someone I like better. So I'm going to pursue my own interests. But then there were those, you don't think you thought that way?
I wouldn't say it was maturity. No, I think it would, or even like critical thinking skill. Because I think so many women, and I know women like this who got married because someone was there and they were feeling like they're supposed to, and and if I don't get this guy now, then it's kind of like the last train at the station kind of a feeling. So I think I think maybe the fact that I'm asexual, I didn't know it at the time though. So I think that's part where I was, where I'm just really not feeling it. So it would take a lot for me to overcome that, to force myself to marry someone that I just had so little feelings for. Even guys I did respect and I did like and I did think would be good husbands, I couldn't propel myself in that direction. But also, I think I was very worried about my parents' marriage because I had seen it break down, and the family life is pretty miserable. So I think I just wanted to be really sure, I guess. And at the bare minimum, I wanted to at least have the feelings.
Yeah. So on the other side of that, Lila, talk about yours, where you had an example of a bad marriage and a dysfunctional marriage, where Lila has the example of, well, I guess I'll get married like my parents did and it will all work out. Right, Lila? I mean, because you were
I have to push back a little bit too, because I didn't do it just because I thought I was supposed to.
Okay.
I thought I was madly in love. I was 18.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah.
I didn't know what I really wanted at that. I mean, it didn't take me very many years to figure out, wait, I'm not that person anymore. I'm 22 now, and I totally would pick someone different. But at the time, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is it. This is it, man." And just
so you're physically attracted, you're mentally attracted, and he fit all the standards, and so you're thinking, you're not even thinking about personality or
anger. I was thinking
about
personality because I thought we fit really well, which was, I was just young, I was stupid, and I wanted to get away from my father. My father was a domineering, patriarchal dude who wanted to control everything, and I wanted out of there. So my boyfriend was my ticket out of my
Yes. Now, see, that was my parents. Both of them were like numbers. My mom was number 7. I think my dad was number 8, and my mom wanted out.
Yeah.
And so they got married at 17 and 18. Because they just wanted to get out of their home life, and they thought that they could form a better family relation, which they didn't.
But the thing is, this is the point. I think for me, what I'm seeing from this conversation is there's a Maven's point of view. There's your point of view for why you did it. There's my point of view why I did it. And there's a million other women who none of us are exactly the same. I mean, there might be some common threads.
Yeah.
But we're individuals. We are not cattle or chattel or whatever you want to call us. We are not just this plastic Barbie doll that's supposed to do a certain thing. We're all unique. And they
sets us up for failure in many ways.
Yeah.
Yes.
The church did not allow us to be individuals. We weren't allowed to. We're all supposed to want the same thing, do the same thing, be happy in doing it, assuming that you just will. And I feel like they weren't looking at statistics at all. There was they weren't looking at the divorce rate for even temple marriages. They were just doing this at the pulpit, and it was a one size fits all gospel.
I think even if they do look at statistics, they're not interested in looking at maybe what they are actually telling us, what the data is telling us, and just coming up with reasons. Our young people aren't getting married. Well, they're being lazy and they don't want to grow up, and it's just, and that's something else. It's just kind of wild to be like constantly infantilized and growing and being an adult, but also being kind of told that you're not an adult because you're not married and grow up, because growing up is getting married. So even if you're, I struggled with careers because I never anticipated actually needing one. I thought I would get married sometime around the time of graduation. So but I had a roommate that was a lawyer, and for a family, and she was delightful. She was really kind, and I thought she looked very pretty. She had blonde hair and blue eyes, and she just was just an awesome person. But she has this career. She's educated. She's an adult, and so I don't know, just it always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, this growing up thing. But
but I think you're right. And I think that's why they encourage for you to get married young. So there's two things in the mind indoctrination here. You need to get married. Get married young. You should have your children. Don't put your education before your children, because when you're 18, what's pushing a lot of your decisions is hormones and fairy tales, and and the whole idea, Lila, like you're saying, look, I'm doing everything I was told to do. I'm dating a guy that's just about ready to leave on his mission. I'm 18, he's leaving on his mission. So I didn't get married till I was 20 because he was on a mission for 2 years. But we dated once a week. That's how much we knew each other. Once a week on Friday and Saturday and Sunday on the weekends, we would go to the youth dances at church. We would go to firesides at church. We would go to all these church activities. And at 18, he's cute. He's got a really cool car. He's going on a mission. What more could you ask for? And you're marrying in the temple. I mean, 3 weeks after he gets home from his mission, we're married in the temple. We're doing everything Spencer Kimball said. You don't have it. You're not allowed to get to know a person, to maybe date for a year or two, find out, oh, this guy goes from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. That's an anger issue. I don't know if I want to marry that. You don't find that out until you're pregnant and you've already been married for 8 months, Yeah. And so there's this whole indoctrination that puts, like you were saying, Lila, you don't know a guy that you date once a week. You don't get to know who they really are.
Especially back then, there was no texting. I mean,
yes,
we did phone calls, but it was like someone else wanted to use the phone, so it was different. It was completely different.
Yeah, and so
you want you to know it doesn't
exactly.
It really makes it sound like it's not important. What's important is he's a returned missionary. What's important is you get married in the temple. Nothing else that actually really matters is ever really talked about as something to look for.
That's exactly right. So, and I think the scary thing about this, and I'm not going to get into politics, but there is this movement right now to put women back in the home and to have children because it prevents them from doing anything else. Like you were saying, it's, when childcare is as expensive as it is and childcare is discouraged, that's a whole nother conference talk. Benson, how dare you put your child in daycare, you wicked woman. And so that's another indoctrination. By the time you have 3 or 4 kids, you're stuck and there is no room for growth. And so that kind of, I think, leads us to, and Maven, I love what you said about why would I pursue an education or a career? That's not what I've been told I should be doing. I should be planning on getting married. He will be the provider, proclamation to the world, and I will be the caregiver. And so that's
education I felt like was good. And as long as I wasn't married, I felt justified in getting the education, but the career for sure, that was a no.
Yeah. And I know, Lila, you and I have both talked the same thing, even if you had a desire. So let's look, I want to bring up the some slides and some statistics that I found. It says that 65% of care recipients are female, with an average age of 69.4. The younger the care recipient, the more likely the recipient is to be male. 45% of recipients aged 18 to 45 are male, while 33% of recipients aged 50 or higher are male. Upwards to 75% of all caregivers are female and may spend as much as 50% more time providing care than males. Male caregivers are less likely to provide personal care, but 24% helped a loved one get dressed, compared to 28% of female caregivers. 16% of male caregivers help with bathing versus 30% of females. 40% of male caregivers used paid assistance for a loved one's personal care. About 14.5 million caregivers are male out of the 43.4% who care for an older family member. And then they go on to say the value of services provided by informal caregivers has steadily increased over the last decade, with an estimated economic value of $470 billion in 2013, up from $450 billion in 2009 and $375 billion in 2007. At $470 billion in 2013, the value of unpaid caregiving exceeded the value of paid home care and total Medicaid spending in the same year. The economic value of the care provided by unpaid caregivers of those with Alzheimer's or other dementia was $217.7 billion. So a lot of the economic statistics that come out don't take under consideration the amount of caregiving that is being done by unpaid caregivers, which is another word for women. that are doing the caregiving. And it goes on to say that approximately 43.5 million caregivers have provided unpaid care to an adult or a child in the last 12 months. About 34.2 million Americans have provided unpaid care to an adult age 50 or older in the last 12 months. And then the statistics go on. And 1 in 10 women report quitting a job due to a pandemic related reason. And almost half said that something behind my thing reason was because they felt unsafe at their workplace. School closures had a substantial effect on working mothers' ability to fulfill work obligations. And the statistics go on. So basically what it's saying, and I've heard this a lot, that the number of women that had to quit their jobs when COVID hit and that schools were closed, and then now they're not able to find jobs afterwards. And the percentages, I can't even remember what the statistic was for women. But the idea that we are responsible for not only our own self-care, but we are also responsible for childcare, older parents' care, older and grandchildren care, and that is just expected. What were you saying, Maven?
Spouses, yeah.
And spouse care. And that leads me to what I want you each to talk about, what you've done as caregivers. And Maven, I wanted to start out with you because I love what you decided to do with your own personal self-care. Because as a single woman, and as you said, and as your life has turned out, you know that you're responsible for yourself. And being a woman puts you in a different category as a single guy, per se. And so talk a little bit about what you have chosen to do for your own self-care. And then also, do you find yourself are you worried a little bit about taking care of your parents or your mom in their older age or anything like that? So talk about that too.
Okay. I'm not sure if I know, I guess what answer you're looking for. I know we've had previous conversations. So when you're talking about self-care, you're talking about not necessarily like for illness or for like mental health, like get a pedicure thing, but just like, are you talking about the realization that I eventually came to as part of my deconstruction was like, there is no man to like wait for anymore. This is my life and I need to take control. Is that what you mean? Or are you thinking more of like mental and physical health?
Yes. And also the idea that you realize that you don't want children, that there is no way for you to completely protect yourself against having a child, even though people make it out like this is your choice. And so in order to protect yourself,
okay, got it.
And for your safety, these are decisions that you've made.
So I don't know if there was ever a point that I honestly really decided that I don't want children. There was a point where I just realized like it's probably not going to happen. And I'm sorry, this is difficult because I mean pregnancy has always been a little bit kind of scary to me. And so I don't know that I don't feel like I've ever felt like a strong desire to be pregnant or to have biological children, which I know other women do feel. So I never quite felt that, but I was still always open to the idea. But as I got older, when it seemed more and more remote, that was something I had to kind of work through. And then what really changed things for me were the death of my sister-in-law's sister due to a pregnancy complication. And then about 1.5 years after her death was when the Dobbs decision happened. They repealed Roe versus Wade. And that's where I really started to feel unsafe, because I think at that point I was 35, 36. And I think at 35 years old, that's when they start to say that a pregnancy is a geriatric pregnancy and it's more high risk at that point. So just knowing that so far I haven't found anybody, and while I'm not close to the idea, just the thing with abortion bans is it makes all pregnancies more dangerous for all women because just things happen. And so especially I think having the trauma of this pregnancy related death just still like really fresh in my mind, I decided, and even though like I don't sleep with anybody, even though like I'm out of the church, I'm I'm still like, I'm asexual. I'm just not interested. So even though I'm not having sex, the sad reality of the world that we live in is that it's really not our choice a lot of the times. Men force themselves on us, and there's just no way you can really 100% be safe. And so even though a lot of people believe in, exceptions for rape to be able to get an abortion if that's necessary, I already knew that those don't always work. And that, again, it's still, you're putting like your safety in the hands of other people, in the hands of politicians, et cetera, to decide whether or not you qualify or deserve this or that or the other. Anyway, so I just, at that point, I made the decision to get sterilized because I figured the chances of me, maybe finding a partner and wanting to get pregnant were really small. And at the same with, I think getting pregnant through a rape is also really small, but the consequences of that was far more catastrophic. And so I think, even though I think, both seemed really unlikely, I decided the safest thing would be to get sterilized. And then I don't ever have to worry about this, catastrophic thing happening at all. So that's what I did to make me feel safe. And it was kind of, I do feel that it was the right thing, and I always did, but it did kind of force me to come to that decision. I mean, because the decision to do it is a decision that I'm not going to have kids. And if it hadn't been for Dobbs, I don't think I wouldn't have made that decision. I can categorically say I had not been thinking about it at all, about sterilizing myself. It was always an open option. So it made me kind of really sit and think like, do I want kids? Is there a chance I might want them? Because this will be my last shot, and I'm deliberately ending it here. And so, yeah, I decided that, yeah, that's what's best.
And I think it's absolutely, it's so unbelievable how men don't understand. They take it so personally, like, they don't understand. Like I had to explain to my husband when we first moved to Utah, we had a lot of construction people coming in and out of our condo because we were having to do some remodeling. And every person that would come in here, sheetrock, plumber, electrician, he would say, "Oh, this is my wife, Renee." And I would say, "Please stop introducing me, and especially stop telling them my name." And he didn't understand why. And I said, with social media the way it is now, you don't understand how many women are stalked on social media, and then it leads to something else. You're giving them, here's my wife's name, here's our last name, here's our freaking address. And it was completely oblivious to him that was very scary. And then, like you say, with the Dobbs thing now, women are terrified to get into an elevator by themselves. They cross the street because they're afraid of being attacked. And now there's absolutely no legal thing for them to protect themselves or to take care of themselves. And it's something that these men, they don't even conceive of how scary the world is.
I think it's resentful too. That's where the not all men, or the whole man versus bear in the woods thing. They get really angry at the idea that they are dangerous, but they are, and it's not just the other men, the guys that are hiding in the bushes to like jump out at a woman. Most of the most assault, most abuse, most rape comes from domestic partners. And so, and now we're seeing more with the Dobbs decision, a lot more reproductive coercion because these things are illegal. So it's giving men another option to control women. And so, but they don't see it. They don't see themselves as the dangerous thing. And they're upset if they get categorized with just all men. But the thing is we're not playing like, video games where somebody's got like an icon kind of rotating above their head or some kind of an outline where you can see that's the enemy. This is a red outline person. All men look the same. And so we can't know who's dangerous and who's not. And so that's why we have to treat all men basically the same. But they don't understand.
I heard a therapist say, the feminists will say, why do I have to be afraid to go out at night? Why do I have to be afraid to go to a bar? Maybe the men should be held more responsible. And he said, that's right. That's absolutely right. The problem is there is no control over psychopaths. And there are always going to be psychopaths out there, and you don't know who the psychopath is. And that's why you as women have to be careful and take care of yourselves. And that's the reality. As much of a feminist as you want to be, the reality is Ted Bundy did not look like a psychopath. And so, I mean, the guy that crawled on top and just tried to assassinate Trump, well, he actually did look a little bit like a psychopath, but but I mean, there is no like, oh, you fit this description type thing.
No, and it's usually the ones who don't fit what you think they would look like.
Exactly.
It's usually the one that you would never guess. Those are the ones. I mean, not always. But
and they kind of blame you for, it's like you were walking out at night. So I mean, I understand that if you want to be safer, you do things, or there are more risky things to do. And unfortunately, if you're a woman, like jogging by yourself early in the morning or late at night, those are more risky. But to then it gets twisted by some people to kind of make it like, well, if you're doing that, then that's your fault. Like
then you invited it, and it's your fault.
Right. But the thing is again, a lot of times women, like, we are doing the right thing. It's not necessarily running, in the early morning that gets us attacked, but being nice to someone who's offered to help us, a guy at the store, like, hey, can I help you carry your groceries? We are vilified if we're mean to men. And I mean, I even saw a TikTok recently where someone was kind of like going over the plight of men, because this guy was saying that he got yelled at by a woman at the gym, and she, yelled, "Stop staring at me." And he's like, "I was just working out. I wasn't staring at her." Like, and it was just this whole thing, like, women are so mean. Like, can guys just, I can't even work out at the gym. I'm afraid of if a woman's there, I can't even look at her. I gotta like stare at the ground. And it's just like, oh, is that really hard for you? I'm really sorry that, a woman hurt your feelings at the gym, whereas like other, women have left the gym and been stalked home and murdered or raped in their apartment. So it's just like, this is not the same thing.
Death. I mean, the other day, 2 days ago, I walk a lot of times down in the river bottoms here in Provo, and it's at a normal hour. It's not when it's dark. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm walking along by myself because my dog died. And this guy comes literally out of the bushes.
Oh my gosh.
Just climbs right out and looks at me. And I walked around, like I kind of did a detour around so that he would have to like visibly cross the thing and to come after me, and people would see that. And I looked back and he was still standing there watching me. I got this feeling in my stomach, like, now I can't even come down here. You have your places where you feel safe. And that I just had to cross that one off the list because there's bushes along the river where people can hide.
And they wouldn't have thought about changing the path in a way that other people could see what might potentially happen if something happened. They don't think like that.
No. And so this is the classic thing is a man is saying, why can't you just, go to 7-Eleven and grab this, for me? And it's 11 or whatever. And you're like, no, that is the worst place to go. Yeah. I can't just walk into 7-Eleven. You don't get it. You get gawked. You get followed. They come out, they jeer. There was a guy who pulled over the other day and stuck his tongue out at me and did all these crude faces. We're stuck at a light and we're going on the freeway. And he's right next to me doing all these motions. And there was another guy in the truck with him doing the same thing. And I gave him the finger. And I just sat there with my eyes straight ahead with the finger, right? And then as we started to go, they zipped along in front of me super fast so that I could not get the license plate, because I would have gotten it and called the cops. The way they were intimidating me, because I was at a light, luckily I had all my doors locked, and I'm like scared to death. I don't know if they're going to jump out and what they're going to, like, I don't know. It was just 2 cars there. So like, these are the things that women have to deal with, and men just have no clue what that feels like to be us. We are always having to be on our guard. We're smaller than they are, usually not as strong, except for you, Renee. You can you're fast. But usually you're like, try it. But so it's just, anyway, I don't know how we got off on this, but
because we're
talking about caregiving, like for parents, or like what I thought.
yeah, because we're talking about, the self-care, that we have to be responsible for ourselves, that even though we have a husband or a brother, they're clueless as to how vulnerable we are as women. And so I love that you shared that. But yes, Maven, then talk about where you're at, because you are single, you don't have any children. So I'm thinking, oh, if anything happened to your parents, your brothers and sisters, well, Maven will take care of them, because she doesn't have anything else to do in life, right? Have you run into that at all?
My brothers assume, yeah. I've cut off my father, so I'm not willing to do anything for him at this moment. But like with my mother, I mean, honestly, I don't have the ability to. So I'm not sure what I would do if my mom needed care, because I'm just not in a place where I really have the resources for that. And neither do my brothers, honestly. So that's something that's just kind of really a big question mark right now. But I want to say, like, besides like parental care, I feel like with my brother's children, as a single woman, that's where a lot of my caregiving has been, and could be. And I'm fine with that, like, because I love my nieces and my nephew, and I'm happy to help out my brothers. But I've helped both of them a ton with their children, especially in the early years and when I was living in Utah. And a lot of times, I think at my own, I guess I could say detriment. I just gave up things to really be willing to try to help them out. And so, like with my first niece is the oldest. She's 13 now. She's developmentally disabled. And so there were times, there was one summer where I worked part-time, like in the evenings, so that I could be available, because daycare was difficult because of the level of care that she needed. It was, more than what you could just, send to a home provider or a regular daycare or something. She needed a really one-on-one supervision and help. And so they worked it out. Like, it was paid a little bit. They gave me some money to help out. And then we were able to go through, I think, Medicaid or Medicare, something like that, to get like a little allowance. It wasn't much, honestly. And financially, it would have been better for me financially if I'd been able to work full time. But again, I wanted to help out, and I was willing to. I was willing to sacrifice that, and I'm able to, because I didn't have my own kids. If I had my own kids, I don't know how my brothers would be doing as well. And so just stuff like that I would do. And I even tried to potty train my niece. They were thinking that she could maybe figure it out. So I did so much research, so much. And it was really difficult, because there's not very much out there for potty training disabled children, especially if they're nonverbal. And so most of it was just about, regular kids that you could, talk to, or you could have them, have a little code word for, them to tell you or whatever. Whereas I just had to really look a lot at body language. And I just, giving her a lot of liquids. I had this little princess potty that would like play a little, if once there's a little bit of pee in there, it connects this thing and plays a little song. And so I thought that would be good. That's some instant feedback to her. And I just was like constantly on it. And in the end, I wasn't able to. The doctor said I did really well, though, when I went to the next appointment. And I was explaining, this is, I was giving her all these juices. We had the potty like always there. I put her on it like every half hour. And I never got mad at her, if she, peed on the floor in her diaper. And they said, you know what? It sounds like you've done like everything I would have, everything I would recommend. And so it's just, she just isn't ready then. And it's not, you tried and you did great. And I got really emotional, like just hearing that validation. Like, I did do everything right. Like, I don't know. It kind of surprised me how emotional I got, but I've done other things for them where like my brother and sister-in-law are divorced. So there was a summer where like my brother worked weekends typically, and my sister-in-law worked during the week. But the way their schedules work, they just couldn't make like the drive, because it was like a 4-hour drive for one or the other to, hand her over. So I took my niece halfway to meet my brother for these, weeks that he would have her. And that was just, I was just happy to do that. And then with my youngest brother, it was during COVID. I moved in with them. Partly because I was having issues with my own housing. But then I kind of put forward the idea of, let's try to buy a house, because I think with your income, because his wife can't work. And she was pregnant with baby number 2. So she was home with toddler and, and pregnant. And then I worked, so I was like, maybe we can get into a house together. So I was able to, and I put up a lot of the down payment money. So I moved in to a house with my brother, and in the end, he was able to get the mortgage, so we didn't actually have to combine our finances for that, which was a really good thing. But all this time, and again with the death of my sister-in-law's sister, she was also a high-risk pregnancy anyway because of like previous injuries and issues. So, I was there in the home, and I wasn't necessarily like a caregiver for her, but I was there if anything were to happen, if she needed help. I would be the one to call the police or try to get her that health care and help that she would need if anything happened, like with her sister. And I helped out with my niece and nephew a ton. I used to take my nephew to the library, and I would just kind of let him run around. I would take him to the park sometimes, just things like that. And it's hard. It's hard to be a mom. And my sister-in-law, like sometimes I'd be working downstairs and I would hear like a breakdown happening upstairs, and I'd go upstairs and both of them would be crying. And so I would take the nephew downstairs and, come up with something to do or leave the house, or, just so everyone can, and it just, I don't know, there's just a lot of things I did, and I was happy to do it. And again, this is a case, I think, of caregiving where it's just sad that I think single women are demonized so much for being irresponsible, not wanting the responsibility of a child. That's kind of how it's shown. Or we're so selfish. That's why we don't have children. There was a TikTok I saw of this woman, and, the comments, everyone was laughing, but this woman's in a car with her grandmother who was over 100 years old, and the grandma's kind of like berating her, saying like, you're in your 30s and you're not married and you don't have children, like like what good is your life? What are you even doing? And it was all this normal, and people in the chat were like, haha, grandma don't lie, and grandma knows what's what, and she's telling it like it is, gotta appreciate that generation and stuff. And the woman, in the car, she was taking it really well. She was just like, I think kind of having fun with it a little bit. But I actually felt really sad for this woman, because again, this conversation is happening in her car, right? She's taking grandma somewhere, right? I'm assuming to appointments or to go out shopping and things like that. And where are her brothers and sisters? They're all married. They've got families. They're being good. Well, she's just being this useless, unmarried single woman with no children. But but who's taking your appointments, grandma? Yeah. And do you think maybe this grandchild is maybe if she had a husband and children, maybe you'd be sitting at home alone,
right,
all day, So it's just, and I don't know, it just really was sad to me that they were like, yep, grandma knows. And I'm just like, no, grandma knows a lot, but this is fair. And it wasn't fair to her to do. But
and it's funny how that's funny that you would say that too, because I saw a TikTok, two things. I saw a TikTok where they gave a list of women who were just killed because some guy took them a bouquet of flowers, and she said, I'm really not interested. And he killed her, And then you've got, like you say, my sister-in-law, she's the oldest of 5 children, and their father has dementia, and he's 95 and he has health issues. She is over there all the time. Now, his brother also goes over once a week and helps out. And my husband lives, we live out of state, so he calls regularly and this kind of stuff. But she is the primary caregiver for this old grouchy man that refuses to do anything that the doctors or anybody tells him to do. And so, she'll go over there, find him on the floor. He's fallen. She's 73, 70. No, she's older than that. She's 70, late 70s, 77. She's over there helping this 95-year-old man because, they don't have any, they had one child. He's grown and he's an adult, and she's retired. So she doesn't work anymore. So of course, you should be the one that comes in, even though the other 3 girls that are in the family also don't have children, don't have jobs, and could easily financially fly in once a week or once a month and take care of him, but they don't, And so it follows that whole persona. It reminds me almost of the old history, the pioneers, where the man would have 5 children. One of the wife dies in childbirth, and immediately he marries someone else because he needs someone to take care of the children, And it's, I even remember before my deconstruction days going, Well, what about the lady whose husband died and she drove her whole family across the plains by herself, because her husband died? Nobody even like puts those two things together. But what you said, grandchildren, children, brothers, kids, reminds me of Lila. I want you to talk a little bit about, I think your story is so beautiful. It just says a lot about who you are, that even after you get divorced, you have 7 children. So you've spent your entire life taking care of children. You finally get divorced. You're finally like, I am not doing this anymore. I'm going to start taking care of myself. And then tell your story of taking care of your husband.
Yeah. Okay. Well, after, let's see, 4 years after we got a divorce, and I'm living near, in Lehigh, but he's in Orem, so not too far. And I have a job and I'm working every day. He comes down with colon cancer, stage 4. It's already metastasized all over in his body, and he's having chemo treatments. And anyway, my kids are trying to help with it, and I finally realized one day, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Might have been in the wee hours of the morning. I woke up and I realized I got to quit my job and take care of him, because it was too hard for my kids, who were not either married or in school or trying, their best to live their own lives. And everyone else, like his siblings and family, they were all parents of kids too. Like everybody was busy. And I just thought, who's going to do this? And I realized it was just, it needed to be me. So I quit my job and I got out of my condo I was renting, got out of my contract, and I just packed up my stuff and put it all in storage. And I moved myself into that house where he was bedridden on the main floor. And I just realized it was the right thing to do. It just was.
Yeah.
And I'm not patting myself on the back, because let me tell you, I did not want to.
Yeah.
It was the last thing I wanted to do, because
where were his parents, and how old were his parents at that time?
Were, both living, older, they're serving missions. They served like 5 missions. Just boom, 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 boom. They'd come home and pack up and go on another one. It was like serial missions while this is all happening, right?
How convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
So
they're serving the church.
Yeah.
Presumably paying for the opportunity.
Well, I think they were doing it out of guilt, because the father had never served a mission. He did military service instead back then. It wasn't this push that everyone needed to serve a mission. So I think he had guilt. So they're going to do it times 5,
Wow.
I just can't imagine like choosing to serve a mission for the church over caring for
taking care of your dying son. Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about. This is what I saw in my own home growing up, where my parents with young kids traveling the world and leaving us for a month at a time. They would bring in a married couple that didn't have kids yet, and they would be thrown into this family of 8 kids at the time and have to take care of all of us, not knowing what in the world our schedule is, how to do this. They've never had kids of their own, but it was all for the church. That's what you did.
Yeah.
You sacrificed your own kids for the greater good. And they were traveling all over the world. That went on recurringly for, I don't know, 15, 20 years while we were young, growing up. So I have all this like deep abandonment trauma from not having my parents there, when I'm growing up, and I have random people taking care of me. And anyway, and my younger siblings, I played their mother, because they were 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and their parents weren't there. Right. So this is like a systemic thing in the church, where you serve missions, and who gives a F what's happening in your own family. Yeah. So I did that with him. He died under my watch while he was at the hospital when he died. but I was there with him. I was the only one there with him when he died.
Gosh. No parents, no siblings.
So everyone was home in bed. It was 6 a.m. or thereabouts. I spent the night in the room in a chair, sitting up, stayed there because I was not about to leave him by himself. And he passed away that morning with me there. I was the only one there. And then the nurse came in. Yeah. But it was like, we were divorced. We'd been divorced for several years, but he was the father of my children. And then I moved immediately after we sold the house and everything in it. I moved in with my father, who was ailing, and he died the following year. So I took care of him with my sister, who was in there. She was single at the time. She'd had her own 5 kids and raised them, but she was in with my father, and I didn't have anywhere to go. So I moved in with them, and we took turns taking care of my dad.
Now, had your mom already passed at that time?
Already passed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
She died a couple years before from Alzheimer's.
Okay. And was there any caregiving that was necessary while she was going through Alzheimer's?
I mean, my sister and I, we tag teamed that one with my mother.
Yeah. And at this time, your children are also getting married.
Yeah.
And going on with their lives.
You know, their lives are just going on forward. People are going on missions. People are getting married. People are going to college. I still had 2 young ones at home that moved in with me. You know, when my dad died, I brought the 2 youngest in with me. The rest of them were out doing their own things. But so there was like several years there where it was my mom, my dad, and my ex, those 3, and both of his parents passed as well. Yeah. So I mean, you know, you get to a certain age in life. You had a son, Renee. That's another story we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, but your life right there is the statistic that I just gave. You're taking care of 2 young children still. You had 5 that have grown on, but they're still calling mom, whatever. And you're taking care of your ex-husband, and you're taking care of your parents. Right. That's the statistics that they're talking about, where the unpaid workers are giving so many billions of dollars worth of unpaid care to people, because that's how our culture is set up. And it's the women that are doing the caregiving.
I had a brother who could have come down from Salt Lake.
Yeah.
He could have done the same. He could have at least come in once a week. I had a sister who lived in Salt Lake, and she did. She came in every Thursday and gave us a break, and she would take my dad on a drive or whatever. But it was, once again, a woman.
Yeah.
And my brother.
My aunt took care of our grandmother, or, my grandmother, her mom. She's got 3 brothers. She was the youngest, the only girl, but, of course it fell on her. Yeah. And the 2 of the brothers, so my dad lived the furthest away, and he did, make efforts to visit when he came up to the area, but the other 2 were living, not that far away. And I think hardly ever helped or visited, as far as I know. And even my best friend, she's married, no kids though, and she's taking care of her husband's grandmother. She's at the end of life, and so she does a lot, and she works on weekends, so she is still working, but that's why she works on weekends, is so that she can be there while her husband is working through the week, like the normal week. She's able to be home to take care of her grandma, to cook her food, to check her vitals, to call. She takes her to her appointments. She's the chauffeur. She's everything. And then sometimes, and it's hard because we'll talk a lot about it, because grandma's kind of mean to her sometimes. She's very negative, very finds fault with everything she does, and it's just so difficult, because it's like she's doing all of this service only to just kind of be berated sometimes and not taken seriously by the rest of the family. But she structures her whole life. Her little sister just had a baby, and so if she's going to plan a trip to go from southern Utah up to northern Utah to see it, she's got to work out her schedule and people to, especially if she travels somewhere with her husband, like she will arrange it. It all falls on her, she's not even related, but it's still, she's the one that everything falls under to make sure that she'll make meals ahead of time, so that whoever's taking care of her doesn't have to cook the meals. They're packaged, they're in the fridge. it's just
That's like next level, you know?
Yeah. And the sad thing is, it's not the fact that these women are doing this care out of their love and their just the devotion that they have for their family members. It's the fact that it's expected, that it's
And
just
unappreciated.
assumed and unappreciated because of, well, you're the sister or you're the oldest daughter. Why, wouldn't you be
no
the
one
one?
else picks up the ball.
Yeah.
And if you're overwhelmed, if it like, because she gets it's a lot, and there's just not a lot of support for it. Whereas if everyone did feel, I think, an equal sense of responsibility, it would, it's all across the board. I think, but it usually ends up falling on one person, and it's very lonely.
And it's usually a woman. Yeah.
Well, and even again, bringing politics into it, because that's what's going on with our life right now. But, J.D. Vance, who's now the vice president nominee for the Republican Party, and his big story is how his mom was a heroin addict and he ended up having to go and live with his grandma. And Mima, saved his life. And it's like, well, she set fire to her husband because he was a drunk. And so there's that. But, it was grandma that gave him a stable place to live. I don't think she was that great of a grandmother, but she gave him a stable place to live so that he could go on and be successful. Not grandpa. I don't even know where grandpa left after Mima set him on fire. But, it's a weirdo story. But it was grandma. Everybody's like cheering for good old grandma, who I think was a little off as well. But it's, let me show you this author that I found. I'm going to bring her on stage.
Thank you so
here.
much for having me, Glenda, and hello everyone who's joining as well. It's so lovely to see people coming along to talk about this, though it is the only thing I'd expect from a well-met audience as well. So
okay, in a minute, her face will come away from my logo here. But she's written this book called Who Cares? The Hidden Crisis of Caregiving and How We Solve It. And Emily Kiway is her name. And I just love her introduction. She reads a little bit from her book, but I love the first thing that she says. So listen to this.
I'm going to talk a bit. I'm going to pepper my talk with some readings from the book. And then I think, Glenda, you'll facilitate questions and comments.
Yes.
So yes, the book, I think you can see my slide. The book is called Who Cares? The Hidden Crisis of Caregiving and How We Solve It. And by way of introduction to it, I want to say that I really wrote this book with two groups of people in mind. The first group being probably all of us that are here. So the caregivers who are currently caring for someone or who have previously cared for someone. And I wrote it for us because I knew how desperately we needed our experience to be witnessed, to be out there in the world, on bookshelves, in bookshops, on Amazon and so on. Because it's not represented. And I wanted to remedy that in my own small way. But I also wrote it, and if you read it, you will definitely get this. I also wrote it for the people who think that care has nothing to do with them, right? Mm. So the people for whom it has not been part of their lives yet, who perhaps think, as people keep saying things to me about this, that it's just about the elderly, as if that isn't all of us, at some point, whether now or in the future, and as if people don't need care at other points in their life too. And those are the people who, realistically probably won't read the book unless someone thrusts it into their hands. And they are whom we desperately need to listen to this topic, because often they are the people in the political corridors and so on, So for that reason, someone who read it, an early version of it, said it is a confrontation of people who think care is nothing to do with them. And that's very deliberate. The book does take as its starting point my story. I would never have written the book had I not been the primary caregiver of my mother. That was for about 4 years. And she did indeed have cancer, 3 types in 4 years, in fact. So she really went for it with that. And she was single, so I was her main caregiver during all of what I'm sure you can imagine that was like. And from there, I look at what I think of as the kind of key foundations of our society, right? Because we have to solve this. And we've got it so wrong that we have to go back to the basics. So how is gender being kind of misused and misunderstood in relation to care? A friend joked to me that the subtitle should just be Women, Who Cares? women. I look at family, technology, psychology, government, all of these key foundations to show how we got into the mess that we're in, and to try, very importantly, to chart a path out of it for us all.
So I'm going to leave it at that. But I love how she said the subtitle should have been "or women."
Yeah.
Basically, the caregivers. And I think it really helped me, because as I've listened to different podcasts and things like that, when people will say, well, what was it that broke your shelf? Or what was it when you deconstructed? Was it the CES letter? Was it Rough Stone Rolling? Was it, No Man Knows My History? What was it that made you start to not believe in the church? And I finally, after doing some research and listening to, you guys tell your stories and stuff, I realized it was the patriarchy in general. And I didn't understand that the entire corporation was set up with patriarchy and with this mindset that this is your role as a woman. You are a caregiver, you are a helpmate, you have no other purpose. But that we are the most important thing on the earth. And I used to, for years, I can pick out all these situations where I would have run-ins with bishops or run-ins with weirdo, home teachers and things like that. And I always individualized it. I always said, oh, that guy's just crazy, or, oh, that guy's a jerk. I didn't understand that it was this entire system that's set up. And so once I read David O. McKay's biography that Greg Prince wrote, I didn't look at it as a biography of a prophet, or I looked at it where my eyes were finally opened to the systemic patriarchy that makes our lives the way they are. And so all of a sudden I started picking out things like when my son was born and I was up in the hospital. We have 5 other children at home. And I'm up in the hospital. I've just had a blood transfusion because I've lost blood. He's in another hospital because he had to have immediate surgery. My husband is at a high priest meeting. That nobody on the high council said, Steelman, what are you doing here? Your wife's in the hospital. Your baby's dying. Why are you here at this meeting?
Why
they were
was
like,
he there? Why was he there?
Because he was told that his family would be blessed through his service. And he really believed that, because that's part of the indoctrination that they're taught. And so so no one from the stake presidency, no one from the bishopric, nobody ever came over, to our home or to the hospital. We didn't even have Relief Society come in. There was no caregiving that was done by this supposedly Christ-centered church. But the thing is, there were individuals, there were women who individually stepped up and said, let me take your kids that aren't in school. I had 2 little ones. The other ones went to school because he was born in December. And so, the other ones would go to school. And this one lady out of the entire ward said, let me come over and take your 2 kids and take care of them while you're up at the hospital with your newborn. And then when we moved, I had one lady that said, I wouldn't mind taking care of TJ if you ever need someone. So it was women. It was when my daughter called and said, Mom, my husband's been killed in a car accident, and we knew we needed to go up to Seattle. I called one woman. I said, can I leave TJ with you? We're going to have to go up to Seattle. She said, yes. It wasn't this group. It wasn't the ward. It wasn't the priesthood leaders. It was one woman that stepped in to help. And, as I at his life ceremony, when I finally realized it was the women, if you believe in any of the stories that are told in the Bible, it was the women that were at Jesus's feet on the cross. It was the women that were there when the rock was moved. It was the women that went back and told the apostles that he has died and that he has risen. But the women are still, there's just this, nope. Everything that you do is expected of you. It's your role, and it means nothing. It has no value whatsoever.
It's all the messy and difficult stuff that the men, I feel like, want to keep out of their lives so that they can do the stuff that's more visual and that has more to do with power or wealth, it seems, and status and prestige, the visible things, and or just their own hobbies and what they want to do. that's what's required. If for them to do all of these things, the women need to play support. And that's in the story, I think, of Mary Whitmer, that the church will often tell. It's one of the very few stories of like early women that, you know, we really hold up, and especially as one of the only witnesses to the Book of Mormon. But like, that's literally she's caregiving. She's taking care of all the household stuff while these men are, you know, translating these plates. And I mean, it's even like in the records, like, you know, the men would get done with translating and then like get up and go over and skip rocks on the lake, you know, well, everything's on her to provide and cook for the meals for not only her own family, but for these guests, and keep up with all the housekeeping. And she gets to a breaking point where she's just tired and she feels like she can't do it anymore. And so it's just told as this really great story of like, look, she was a faithful woman doing the things that she was supposed to do. And she had this amazing, wonderful experience. And that shows like that God, it matters to God. And he's happy that Mary, and by extension, all of us women, that, you know, they're happy that we're doing all this background work, and that God really does love us, and he is aware of us when even though it really, really, really feels like he's not a lot of the time. And I used to really love that story. I think for that reason, even as a kid, you get this sense already, you know, that things are really stacked against you. And now it just seems so manipulative to me, and also really sad. But it's just been going on all of this time.
Yeah. It's the same thing with Emma. I remember in 1985 reading, you know, The Enigma. And I remember thinking, and again, it was, there's nothing that I can put my hand on except for the patriarchy. I remember reading this book and going, wait, Emma is running a hotel. She's doing quilts. She's trying to keep food on the table because Joseph's at the school of prophets. He's meeting with his guys, and they're all taking Hebrew lessons, and they're, you know, and like you say, going out and skipping rocks and doing all their apostleships and things like that, where the women are trying to keep food on the table. And when people talk about Emma burying her dead babies, I think someone said she had like 13 kids, and then half of them died. And, you know, only 3 of them. Can you remember any of the statistics exactly?
No,
but she buried so many children. And everybody they almost give Joseph, look, oh, poor Joseph. His twins had, you know, died after the mob came and pulled him out. I'm like, yeah, Emma's kids died too. It wasn't, you know, but they're always just pushed behind because they were just doing their job.
And Emma was a problem because she didn't like what was happening.
Yeah.
You know, shame on her. She's going to be destroyed now for not being more supportive to her husband. And, you know, she's the one that had to clean up their tobacco.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, when you really think about what these women went through, especially her with her husband gallivanting around, marrying everything in a skirt, that woman, no wonder she didn't go west. I wouldn't have either.
Yeah.
The bar to be a problematic woman is really, really low, whereas the bar to be a problematic man is really, really high. I mean, I'm thinking the family killer, Michael Haight in, what was it, Enoch? He had a super long obituary praising him, praising his community service, praising his church service, saying how much he loved his family. Like the family that he shot, it was his wife, her mother, and their 5 children, and then himself. He gets this amazing thing. But if you complain as a woman, or if you dare ask the men, like, where is Heavenly Mother, or why can't we have the priesthood, then it's just like, you guys are all just concerned about power. Like, this is all, you know, or if you're not married, you're so selfish, you know.
In your corner.
Yeah. It's even just like voicing any kind of dissent that makes you a problem in Mormonism. But yeah, again, like a literal like family annihilator can still be praised, you know. Or the shooter in what was it, South Carolina? I don't know. I just remember something about him having a bad day. You know, it's just like, you know, sometimes men have bad days. Or when I did the child abuse awareness marathon, there was one case where I remember, you know, people had said like the discussion behind this guy that had, you know, molested a child was like, well, we need to find out if this is like a serial problem or if this is like a midlife crisis thing, you know, like just, you know, if it's a one-off, then like, let's hold on. Let's just make sure, you know, what we've got here. And it's just like, you know what, why is it that that's not a midlife crisis thing. That's maybe buying a Jaguar or maybe divorcing, or maybe you're chasing some younger skirt. Like, that's still not good, but that's but to hurt a child, like that's not midlife crisis. Change your career, do something else. Anyway, it's just,
I know that could be a whole nother podcast, because I've got 3 personal one-on-one stories of people in our ward that were having an affair. When they were finally found out, the wife gets 2 of them. Both women get cancer right after it's discovered, and they die. And then the husband goes on to marry the mistress that he was having an affair with in the temple. Oh, they got married in the temple. Wow. And he until one of them has been actually arrested and accused of sexual assault. Now it's like, because we didn't do anything, 10 years ago, because we're just going to forgive and forget, and we're just going to love him and welcome him back into the ward with his mistress. And they're going to get married in the temple. She's joined the church, and they're going to get married.
It's all worked out.
And nothing was done. The bishop actually said, I'm not going to excommunicate him because he's got children, and we don't want that to be, So so now he's arrested for more sexual abuse.
The wife dying, that was making me think, like, a lot of time, the things that caregivers that we're doing for others, I would not be returned. And I'm not sure, Lila, if you feel this way. Like, do you think your husband would have taken care of you if the roles were reversed? I feel like, even like with my brothers, they were grateful for help I gave, but when I think of getting my brother a house, I did so much for that. Like, I was the one that pushed the initial idea. I was the one, mainly looking at houses. Of course, my brother did too. And he did a lot of work on the house once we got it, but just kind of like really selling the idea, getting all the financial documents together, getting the down payment together. I did a medical study during COVID that suppressed my immune system to get 10 grand to put towards that. I'm literally putting my body
literally put your life on the line.
And I could have, if I wanted, I could have maybe insisted that we share the mortgage, or that I have like half stake in this house, so I'm out of it now. Like, it's his. I will probably never be able to get myself my own house, at this point, just with the way things are going and money. But and that's fine with me, because my brother has a wife and he has kids, and I want my niece and nephew to have a home. And I think it's far more important for them to have a home than for me. I'm very, you guys know a bit of my story. I've lived in a van, and if I had to, I could do it again, and I would make it as fun as possible. But at the end of the day, though, I feel like, as much as my brothers appreciate what I've done for them, I don't think they would return as nearly as much. And in a way, they kind of didn't, because again, I feel bad saying, because I love my brother and I love my sister-in-law, but when I had surgery on my ankles, I had the surgeries pretty close together, because I was trying to. I had met my deductible in insurance that year, so I was trying to really get it by the end of the year. Yes. And my sterilization all happened too. So I had one foot surgery in October, and then in December I did the sterilization, and then the other foot. And so there are times and they did help me some, but there were follow-up appointments that I had to get a Lyft or an Uber for, because I don't know. I just have mixed feelings about it, because I also don't want to force them to care for me. When if my sister-in-law feels like she doesn't have the capacity for it. So I kind of feel conflicted, because in a way I want her to say no, because she's also somebody that has trouble doing what's best for her. So if but at the same time, sometimes it just really felt kind of unfair. That just,
it plays into that statistics of why women stay single after their husbands die. And they don't, you've got, I remember when my husband and I did a tour, and there was a group of 6 over 70-year-old women that were all friends. And some of them had husbands that had died, and some of them were divorced, but none of them had remarried. And statistically, you see this, where women after a certain age, they're like, finally, I will take an Uber to the hospital. I will take care of myself. I will check myself into assisted living before I get, marry again, so that I have another man that I have to take care of, you know?
Yeah.
So you're so right. I mean, statistically, that's exactly what happens. So, well, ladies, go ahead, Lila.
Well, I was just gonna say something kind of flippant. I feel like I have PTSD from all of that. The whole, all the kids getting married really young, taking care of people dying, moving 5 times in 2 years, just all of that. And when I get thrown back into my family, which I love all of them, but when
Yes.
all the grandkids and all my kids, everybody's together and there's chaos and noise, I go into a mini panic attack. It's like,
Yeah.
oh no, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening
I'm gonna
again.
do this. Yeah.
I can't do this. Like I think I don't know that I will ever marry again just because I did it and it nearly killed me. Like it was
Yeah.
such a long drawn out thing for me
Yeah.
where daily I cried myself to sleep. It was
Hmm.
hard work.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I'm not saying, you know, I know a lot of people are much happier than that. I'm not assuming that that's the norm, but I am
Yeah.
just saying that, you know, I tried to do it the way we're supposed to do it,
Yeah.
and I gave it my best. And I am so glad that at some point I listened to me.
Yeah.
And I finally said, I'm either going to die here in a fetal position or I need to get up and go. And no one's going to do it for me. I got to do it for myself, or I'll be here till I die. And it was like that. It was that poignant. And the weirdest thing that happened was my bishop called me in and he told me, he said, you've done enough.
Oh,
You can go.
wow.
You don't hear that. I mean, at the time I was still active and it was like God was speaking to me. You know, it was like, I was getting.
No kidding.
Yeah.
But,
I wish that more, and I think this is the saddest part. Maven, how old are you?
I'm
shouldn't ask you that.
37 now. I think, yeah, no.
Okay, you're the same age as my boy. I can't believe it. Oh, these babies. But my daughters are both in their 40s now. And I see their brains, you know, finally come. I see the estrogen is dropping a little bit. So their brains are finally able to, you know, and they're saying things like, I think I'm going to get a job, or I wish I would have known that daycare isn't the devil's path, that I could have done this or that, and that if I would have been taught that daycare is okay, that it would have been a good thing. Here I am at 41 or 42, and where would I have been if I would have known that it's not a bad thing to put your kids in daycare, like we were indoctrinated. And Lila, what you were saying about one of the things that clicks me right away, sends me into is when I hear these men say, for 45 years, I worked at the law office. And I'm like, bully for you. For 48 years, I've been taking care of children and grandchildren. And when you say that, they go, so that doesn't take any brains. That doesn't take anything. But these men get, you know, and 39, you know, JD Vance, the new vice president for Trump, is 39 years old. He's 39 years old. Please stop making out like he has lived a life that is just extraordinary, you know? And because women are never given acknowledgement for what they sacrificed and what they did to be a caregiver, like we were taught to be. And like you say, Maven, everything that you did, your name should have been on that mortgage. They should have said, well, we'll have to buy her out.
I think it's good that we didn't, and I was willing not to, because I mean I eventually left because we had a falling out, and which I really, you know, thought might happen is when we moved into the house. I was going to tell them that I wasn't in the church anymore, just for that kind of informed consent piece, just in case that would make a difference for them. But then when my sister-in-law's sister died, and you know, I was just like, this is not the time to come out and say these kinds of things, you know, this, you know, so I just kind of buried it and kept it in. And as much as I loved helping out in the house, and as much as I love my niece and nephew, I really did have to bury myself in the home a lot because they're still very believing. So, there was definitely, and it was initially supposed to just be a year, and then I was supposed to be able to move out on my own. My brother was gonna, kind of repay back the money so I could, take this and go. And he did end up being able to. But that's because he really wanted me out by that point. When it was just me asking, like, okay, like it was supposed to be a year, and then it became 2 years, and then it's looking like it's not going to happen. But like, and even I
He's
was
not
worried about
leaving. What do we do?
because having the 2 kids, and I was like, if I leave, then I never felt like I always felt like I could do more. Like no matter what, I always felt like I could help out more than I'm doing. And so there was still always a lot of guilt anyway, but I would worry about leaving because I was like, if I do leave now, then my sister-in-law is by herself with 2 little kids. And she really is like, there wasn't a strong community where we lived. They have a ward, and also like the street that we live on is a super busy street. So it's not like you can just get to know the neighbors or anything, it's really isolating. And so I was worried about her and the kids. And, luckily my nephew's old enough now to get in, he's in school. So it's just my niece at home. And, but potty training again, like I helped out with that too. I helped, I got the ball rolling for my
There's
nephew.
your new business. You can start potty training kids.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because I was just like, and I tried before she had the baby, I was really kind of pushing for it because I was like, this is something I can, if we can do it, it will be easier for you as a new mom, is to not have 2 kids in diapers,
Yes.
And I had started the ball rolling with my niece too before I, before the falling out happened and I left. So yeah, so it's almost kind of good that it happened because I think, now I can really be myself, and now I'm able to actually, I guess, kind of have at least that weight lifted of kind of this censorship and just just keeping things under wraps. So,
okay, I'm serious, Maven.
I would still be there if it weren't for the falling out.
Exactly. I think you should start that business because I know a lot of people that have 3 and 4-year-olds that aren't potty trained that would hire you in a heartbeat to learn. So there's your new business.
I mean, maybe.
Maven. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think it would be a hard sell
things.
for somebody that doesn't have their own children. I think a lot of people would be like, why would I? How do you know what you're doing? I don't know.
Well, because that nanny, what's Nanny 911? She's never had any children. People are hiring her to come in and give them parenting advice. And I'm like, what's that? But that's a whole nother podcast too. Yeah. But anyway, you guys thank you so much for sharing your stories. I really appreciate your vulnerability because I think it's important. I mean, I remember working in the temple, and there was a lady that I worked with in the temple. And I remember her saying, well, I'm taking care of my father-in-law now. And I remember thinking, why are you taking care of your father-in-law? Where's the husband's family that should be taking care of the father-in-law? But she was just such a wonderful, loving person. And it just was something else that she did. And there are so many other women that just have absorbed the indoctrination of who they are and what their purpose is. And so they're very happy and good for them. I love that they found peace for that. But I love what you've shared because, Lila, I see that all the time. I see people that are congratulated for going on 45 missions. In reality, they're just escaping having to be grandparents and babysitters all the time, but they would never say that out loud because no, they're just serving the Lord. And Maven, I hear other women like you that have given so lovingly to brothers and sisters and things like that because you're a good, kind person, but people look at you like, well, yeah, she's not married. Why shouldn't she be the one that helps? I mean, that's what this lady is talking about in her book, about thinking that I'm never going to get old. I'm never going to need caregiving or I'm never going to have to take care of my parents. They've got a good, trust set up or something like that. It's just the not understanding what caregiving means and what the role of a caregiver is or the.
Sorry.
Please,
I know you're trying to wrap up.
No, please.
It's funny that it's almost it's kind of a flip of what you're saying, where people are thinking it's never going to happen to me, where I'll need caregiving, or as an older single woman, I get kind of bombarded with that argument a lot. Is this who's going to take care of you, or you're going to regret it someday when you're old and lonely and nobody loves you, like there's this kind of a thing that is like really, really constant. Like, you're so selfish now by not having children, so just you wait till you wish you had someone to take care of you, and then you'll see, and then you'll be sorry, kind of a thing. So it's just kind of interesting that, I mean, first of all, that can happen anyway. You know, people are in rehab centers and, in hospice care and all this, who have children who either can't or don't want to take care of them because of how their relationship is. Yeah. And it's just like, it's just interesting to me that I mean, at least in where I'm at, that kind of gets thrown at me.
Well, I love that. I love that men say that, though. Men say that because they're like, oh, you're going to be an old lady with cats. And I'm like, well, statistically, women live longer. So actually, we're going to take care of you. You're going to die, and we're finally going to be free to go to, Europe with my girlfriends. So statistically, that's not true. It's the men that there was an old lady in our ward. She buried 2 husbands and took care of both of them until they died. And then she ended up, living quite a long time by herself. I have an aunt that lived in England, died at like 93 years old, never married, never had any children, had a beautiful life, was involved in her church in England. And I mean, this whole idea that you have to be married so someone can take care of you, it's like, well, statistically, that's not true.
Yeah.
So I love that there's still that idea that, that we're just, who's going to take care of us? And I'm like, nobody, because nobody's ever taken care of us.
That's exactly. That's why, and we know how to make friends, and so that's why I feel like that's what there's a lot of memes about, like older women just like having fun or sipping wine or just making all of these kind of wry jokes, where you don't really see that with the men so much, because men, when they lose their wives, a lot of times are very, very lonely, and they don't know how, or they like you said with the pioneers on the plains, that happens today. A guy will look for another wife to take care of him, and the older women know that's what's happening. It's not like, oh, we're falling in love, we're too old, we're both widows and we're lonely and we found each other, kind of a thing. Like, they know what's up. And so that's why it's usually a younger woman, that isn't aware of like how soon she'll be doing a lot of caregiving. And anyway, that's exactly right. We know how to be like, have friends and be friends.
Yes.
And exactly, do all of these things. So it's not the threat that they think it is.
Exactly. And when we get together, we actually express our feelings and we share our feelings and our thoughts. So, it goes along with the men. We're like, well, how's John doing after his divorce? And he's like, I don't know. Well, didn't you just spend 4 hours playing golf with him? Yeah. Well, you don't know how he's doing. I know he's got a new driver. I mean, that's as far as the conversation goes, where women are like, they're sharing their guts with each other. And that's the beauty,
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Well, I love sharing my guts with you guys.
Oh, I love it too. That's what we should change the name. Sharing your guts, because she became visible. Well, thank you, ladies. Again, it was just so wonderful. And I hope, ladies, if there's any of you listening out there that are feeling lonely or feeling frustrated, that your life didn't go as you were told it should go, just know that you're probably following your own path, and that you need to become visible and be yourself and be the best you that you can be. So thanks for joining us today. Next week, Lila, I'm going to be interviewing a lady that is an absolute kick in the pants. She is another single lady, single mom, bodybuilder. So I'll send you some information on her. She's also a keynote speaker and does a lot of motivational speaking.
Wow.
And stuff
Okay.
like that. So, that's another example of women taking care of themselves and learning how to be single and live by themselves and still be happy. So that's what we're all about on She Became Visible. So thanks for joining me today, ladies. It's been a great time. Bye.